Good day everyone, especially to Ma'am Annie. My name is Angeline Gaudiano and I will be your next reporter for today's video. We are still under part 3 of our lesson and we are now down to module 9 which tackles about the Gestalt psychology. But before anything else, let us first have a very short activity. I want you to take a look at these pictures and tell me what can you see. Do you sense good or evil in this picture? How about the second picture? Is there a possibility that you can see or do you see you and me in this picture? Alright. So these pictures are just some illustrations that challenge our perceptual skills. And when you look at the pictures and the activity, our mind followed a certain principles of perceptions and Gestalt psychology is concerned with such principles. And I hope with that activity, you have now at least gained some idea of what will be Module 9 all about. So, what is Gestalt psychology? Gestalt psychology is the initial cognitive response to behaviorism. It emphasizes the importance of sensory rules and the dynamic natures of visual perceptions. So, meaning to say, Gestalt psychology focuses more on perceiving how people perceives the figure, objects, and forms as a whole entities rather than separate parts. And the term Gestalt psychology means the term Gestalt, sorry for that. The term Gestalt means form or configurations. And when we say configuration, it means configuration it is the arrangements of elements in a particular form, figure, or just simply a combinations of elements. Psychologists like Max Wertheimer, Wolfgang Kohler, and Kurt Koffka are the founders of Gestalt psychology. So, and they also concluded that learners or perceivers are not passive but rather active. They suggested that learners do not just follow instructions or do not just wait on what the teachers will tell them what to do, but instead, they actively process and restructure data in order to understand the information. This is what's so called the perceptual process. And certain factors impact on these perceptions. Factors like one's present situation, needs, attitudes, and past experiences can affect their perceptions. Earlier, with our activity, one may have difficulty in perceiving both the words you and me in the second pictures of our activity. If one is trying to forget an ex-sweetheart who caused pain or simply because they are looking at the foreground and not the background. And according to psychologists, the way we form our perceptions are guided by certain principles. These are the principles or laws. These are the law of proximity, the law of similarity, the law of closure, the law of good fragrance, fifth, the law of good continuity, and lastly, the law of figure or ground. Let us take a look at these principles or laws one by one. Let us first have the law of proximity. The law of proximity states that elements that are closer together will be perceived as a coherent object. So as you can see in our example here, we have three sets of group. Two sets of group from the left and another group from the right. When objects we are perceiving are near each other, we perceive them as belonging together or as a group. Like for example, in a classroom setting, me and my friends are a group because our chairs or our seating arrangement are closer to each other. Therefore, our classmates will perceive us as a group. Let's have now the law of similarities. Law of similarities, the elements that are similar will be perceived as part of the same form. So for example, here, there seems to be a triangle in the square and circles on or in the middle. So we link similar elements together, even though they are they are in the same place or they are closer to each other. A group of intelligent students in a classroom. So we will perceive them as a group because they share the same characteristic, which is being intelligent. So the law of similarity says that elements that are similar will be perceived as a group or as part of the same form. The law of closure. So we tend to fill the gaps and enclose of figures that we perceive. So in our example here, it is not really a triangle, right? They are just some broken elements that are put closely. But because of the law of closure, we tend to fill the gaps and perceive this picture as a triangle. We enclose a space by completing a contour and perceiving this as a whole picture. So let us have another example for the law of closure. When we ask a child to trace. So for example, I'm going to draw a broken line. So line, a broken horizontal line. So line, you can see that broken line. So line, line. And then the child now will going to draw a line, a straight line. So line. Because in our eyes, it is simply a line. As easy as that. In our eyes, we perceive them as a straight line, a straight horizontal line. We tend to fill the gaps. We are now down to the fourth principle of Gestalt psychology, which is the law of good continuation. So here, when we are teaching, like for example, when we are teaching the child to sing the alphabets. At first, we're going to sing first the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then you stop. The child now will going to continue the rest, like G, H, I, J, K, M, N, O, P. Individuals have the tendency to continue contours whenever the elements of the patterns establish a implied directions. In our example here, the red line, we can continue to draw a line here if we wanted to. The same with the black line, because there is an established pattern and implied direction. Next one is the law of good pregnance. The stimulus will be organized into as good figure as possible. In this figure, good refers to symmetry, which is the balance, the simplicity, which is the simplest forms of an element, and the regularity. In this figure, the figure is perceived as a square overlapping a triangle, and not a combination of several complicated things. In the principle of good pregnance, we do not make things complicated here. The last principle of Gestalt psychology is the law of figure or ground. In this picture, you will perceive a tree, a big tree, which is the foreground, ignoring the background, which are the ape and the tiger. So, the law of figure or ground, we tend to pay attention first in the foreground and ignoring the background. Like for example, if this one. If I'm going to ask you what can you see, the first thing you will tell me is you can see a heart, which is the foreground. This is the foreground, and ignoring the background, which is the hands. This background is my hands. So, the law of figure or grounds, I'm focusing more on foreground first, ignoring the background. So those are the 6 principles or laws of Gestalt psychology. I hope you can follow with me, and I hope you have really understood what are these 6 principles. Namely, the law of proximity, the law of similarity, the law of closure, the law of good continuity, the law of good pregnance, and lastly, the law of figure and ground. And now, we are going to proceed with our insight learning. So, Gestalt psychology adheres to the idea of learning taking place by discovery or insight. The idea of insight learning was first developed by Wolfgang Kohler, in which he described his experiments with the ape. By the way, are you familiar with the experiments of Wolfgang Kohler with the apes? So if not, so imagine this is a box. This is a huge box. And on top of this box, I attached the banana here. On top of the box, I attached the banana. And there are four apes, namely ape 1, ape 2, and ape 3. The box is out of reach and can only be reached by jumping. But only the sultan, the intelligent ape who have solved the problem. That was his experiments with the apes. In each of these problems, the important aspects of learning was not reinforcement. Do you agree with this? Because I personally agree with this. Learning do not takes place when giving rewards to the actions that has been or the actions that are desirable to happen. But instead, it is the coordinations of thinking to create new organizations of materials. And Wolfgang Kohler referred to this behavior as insight or discovery learning when you are using those available resources and to solve using available resources or materials to create or to solve a certain problem. Gestalt principles not only influence perception but also impact on learning, because according to research, our knowledge is grounded on how we see, we smell, we touch, we taste, and hear the world around us. Other psychologists like Kurt Lewin expounded this Gestalt psychology. His theory called this life space by Kurt Lewin, and it was adhered to Gestalt psychology. He said that an individual has these inner and outer forces that affects his perceptions and learning. These inner forces includes attitudes, behavior, and feelings of the learners. So if you have this motivation, or we as a student have this motivation, attitudes, and feelings to learn, then we will learn. And lastly, the outer forces includes the attitudes and behavior of the teachers. So if I really believe that if a teacher was really strict with her or his rules, then at the end of the semester or at the end of this journey, we will thank them for being or for having that attitude to us. Thank you. And that would be the end of this module 9. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have learned something new from me. Thank you.